Hello, I'm Scott and you're watching Your Experience Guide, and in this video I'm going to talk about the 5 things I miss the most about Blackpool Pleasure Beach from years gone by. Now, why am I doing a video about this? Well, on a recent trip to Germany there was 4 of us and we're all Blackpool Pleasure Beach fans, and whilst we were sat chilling in a hotel reception after a day at a theme park, we decided to watch the old classic Blackpool Pleasure Beach series from 1997, which got us all talking about the things we miss about old school Blackpool Pleasure Beach. So I thought, it's a good video idea, why not talk about it on the channel? So here we are, this is the 5 things that I miss the most about old school Blackpool Pleasure Beach. So before I do get into the 5 things that I miss, I'm just going to give a bit of background info on this video. So it's not just going to be 5 rides to talk about, it's going to be 5 separate things. It could be rides or things that Blackpool Pleasure Beach used to do in the past that I miss about the park. Been a fan of Blackpool Pleasure Beach since the early 90s. I used to love going there with my parents. Then I went there a lot as a teenager, got my season pass, and I still go there a lot now in my 30s. So you could say I've been a lifelong fan of Blackpool Pleasure Beach. So I've seen it change a lot over the last 20, 25, 30 years. So there is a lot of things I miss about it. So actually putting it into 5 things was quite difficult. I could have done the 10 things I miss about old school Blackpool Pleasure Beach. I'm not doing this in any sort of order where I say this is what I miss the most, this is what I miss the least. This is just the 5 things that I miss. So I'm going to start with the late night closes at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Of course, Blackpool Pleasure Beach still do their late night riding events every so often, where the park is open from 10 AM to 10 PM, or you've got the Twilight Thrills where the park's open from 10 AM to 9 PM. But the difference is they are set dates. You can go on Blackpool Pleasure Beach's website now, see when those dates are, and you can plan around them. In the old days, you could rock up at Blackpool Pleasure Beach 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. Blackpool would be busy, Blackpool Pleasure Beach would be busy. You wouldn't know what the closing time would be because the park would stay open until people stopped going on the rides. Now that, of course, goes all the way back to the paper ride days, where the more you were spending, the longer the Pleasure Beach would stay open. But even when Pleasure Beach moved to wristbands, they still extended the opening hours quite often. I think back to the early 2000s especially, where you'd go on a Saturday where you were perhaps thinking, all right, it's probably going to be a 6, 7 o'clock close today. It's not going to be that busy. And you'd get there, the sun would be out, Blackpool would be rammed, Blackpool Pleasure Beach would be rammed to be at full capacity on most of the rides. And they'd be like, right, we're opening until 9, 10 o'clock. And you'd be like, excellent, but I'm going to get home. There's no trains. But that didn't matter because it was like Blackpool Pleasure Beach. They could just extend it any time. And it happened so often. You really didn't know what time the park was going to close, and that made it exciting because you weren't thinking, oh, I've got to rush around and get everything done by 5 o'clock because the park's chucking us out at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. You knew if it was busy that you could relax a little bit because it was like, yes, it is busy, but 1, the queues are moving quickly, which I'll get to later, and 2, the park's going to extend because everyone's spending money, but it just doesn't happen very often now, and that's the issue of having the set closing times of, oh, it's going to be a 10 o'clock close on this date in August, because you can't predict the weather 6, 7 months in advance. And that was the good thing about flexible opening times at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. If you went on a sunny day and it was a Saturday, if you knew the park was going to be busy, you knew there was a good chance they would extend. As good as the late night riding events can be, it's just not the same because you have to plan around it. You have to look in the calendar and go, right, if I want to get on the rides in the dark at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, I've got to go on this date in July or this date in August. But the issue with that is, because they've made it an event, they also have fireworks, which means it's not really late night riding because, oh, if the park's busy, yeah, we're open till 10, but we're going to shut the big one at 8 o'clock. It's just not the same. It used to be the park stayed open till 10, 11, 12. The ride stayed open right up until on the dot. You still had a chance to go on the rides at like 9, 10 o'clock at night. Whereas to do that now on a late night riding, if it's busy, you're going to have to join the big one queue 6, 7 o'clock to guarantee that night ride. The first ride I'm going to mention in this is a classic from my childhood and my teenage years at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and it is the log flume. I really, really miss the log flume at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Now, you could write in the comments, come on Scott, get over it. They removed it in 2006. But it was such a good ride. It was a fun ride with your family, fun ride with your friends. And as a parent, I just missed the opportunity of being able to go on that ride with my son. I can take him on the Nickelodeon Land log flume. It's not the same. The big log flume at Blackpool Pleasure Beach was exceptional. Classic Arrow log flume that was full of character, had great views, you were guaranteed a soak in, you were guaranteed a great time, and I really, really do miss it. It's been gone a long time, but I still think it's sorely missed at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. And I am going to be controversial. It was better than Valhalla when Valhalla opened. It'd still be better than Valhalla now. It was a great water ride that I don't think's ever been properly replaced at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Now, the third thing I'm going to talk about is, it will maybe be considered as a bit controversial and a little bit unfair on modern day Pleasure Beach. So before I get to it, this is in no way meant to be disrespectful to anybody that works at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. The throughputs on the rides and the capacity on the rides, especially the roller coasters, used to be considerably better at Blackpool Pleasure Beach than in the modern day. And that is not me trying to offend anyone, that is just the truth. You have to look at things like, for example, the big one. It used to be on 3 trains. Okay, it's run 2 trains now for the best part of 20 years. But even so, the queue line on the big one, you used to look at it and you used to see it throughout the extensions, and you used to know that you would still get on it quickly. Even when it was on 2 trains, and just observe it for a minute or two just to see that that queue was going to move quickly. You'd see the trains being dispatched almost as like under a minute sometimes. They'd go into the station, everyone would get off, everyone would get on, the staff had charged down the train, it'd be out. And you would be on the lift hill going up on one of the big one carriages, you'd be going up the lift hill and you'd still see the other train making its way back to the station. But even when you got back to the station, your train usually went straight back in because they were just chucking the trains out, and that queue used to move so quickly. There's so many other examples as well. Valhalla especially, back in the old days, started off with 25 boats. That obviously got slashed because the system couldn't cope with 25, so that got reduced. And for many, many years, Valhalla was on 16 boats. These days, I think it only runs on 8, a maximum of 10. I'm not even sure it does do 10. But every time I did it last year, it seemed to have 8 boats on. So that Valhalla queue now, again, it's like the big one queue where you look at it and go, oh, that's going to take an hour, 2 hours now. Whereas in the old days, you'd look at it and go, yeah, that's 20, 30 minutes at most. Grand National, even on 4 trains, does it really make a difference? It doesn't seem like it, because it takes the computer system so long to be able to dispatch a train. It just doesn't seem to make any difference. So the Grand National, again, you used to look at it, the queue would be way past where the fountain is, and you'd be like, half an hour. Now you'd look at it, it's at the bottom of the steps, and you're thinking, that's an hour. The infrastructure just seems to lend itself to slow operations compared to what I'm used to from years gone by. And the good, quick, fast throughputs of Blackpool Pleasure Beach of the 90s and the 2000s especially is something that I really miss on those busier days at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. The next thing to talk about, and the fourth thing to talk about, is the Wild Mouse, which was removed at the start of 2018. Now, I don't disagree with the decision to remove the Wild Mouse from Blackpool Pleasure Beach. I think it's a decision that a lot of parks would have taken earlier than Blackpool Pleasure Beach did. Now, we have to remember as well that the Wild Mouse removal rumours started as early as 2012. So to actually get it all the way through to the end of the 2017 season, or halfway through the 2017 season, we did quite well considering when the rumours started. But again, I do understand it, because when you think about it, low capacity roller coaster, high insurance costs, high maintenance costs, a lot of work needed done on it, including changing the restraint mechanism because something had been complained about. And on the subject of complaints, it was a ride that people complained about a lot. And that is the issue with roller coasters from years gone by, like the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even the 90s, is that social media gives people the opportunity to say, this ride hurt me, this ride injured me, this ride threw me out, this ride did this ride did that. All negative comments that don't look good on an amusement park. So I kind of understand why that would have been a factor, along with the low capacity, the high insurance and so on. So I don't disagree with the decision to get rid of the Wild Mouse. However, I do miss the Wild Mouse, especially when I'm in the fountain area at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. I used to sit there with a drink, watch the Grand National, watch the big one, watch the Wild Mouse. It was full of atmosphere. Obviously, it was when Trauma Towers was opposite as well. That whole area has lost something when the Wild Mouse was removed. But not only that, we lost a fabulous ride when the wild mouse was removed. So I definitely miss it, but I understand why it was removed. So lastly, it's the sights, sounds and atmosphere of Blackpool Pleasure Beach. In the recent years, last 10, 15 years, Blackpool Pleasure Beach has gone from being an amusement park full of colour, full of exceptional amusement park lighting packages, to a park which has got a lot of grey, not a lot of colour, not a lot of lighting, and it's just not the same. A couple of examples here. Obviously, the big ones, Chaser Lights, has gone. There was just something special about being at Blackpool Pleasure Beach at the night when you used to see the Chaser Light going up the Big One lift hill. You'd see the Chaser Lights on the Grand National lift hill, roller coaster, Big Dipper, Big One station, one going up Ice Blast. It used to just give that special Blackpool Pleasure Beach nighttime atmosphere. Add that alongside the well-lit trains, the well-lit walkways. It was just so vibrant, so atmospheric, and Blackpool Pleasure Beach at night was a very special place. As well as that, there's the lost sounds of Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and these ones might sound a bit random if you didn't hear them at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, but they were part of the Blackpool Pleasure Beach atmosphere. So you've got the old Wolf in Beaver Creek, you've got the old Alice in Wonderland music, you've got the noises of the wild mouse, which is of course gone. You've got Hurry, 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 the greatest show on earth is about to begin, gone. The old ride announcements, the ones about this is a white knuckle ride, they're not played very often now. The old Big One announcement about how it was the tallest, fastest, steepest roller coaster in Europe or the UK or whatever, just things like that were part of the Blackpool Pleasure Beach charm. Even the Big One breakdown announcement had more character than the current one. So I know it sounds daft, but sights and sounds can really make the atmosphere at an amusement park. And a lot of the old sights and sounds of Blackpool Pleasure Beach that are now gone are really missed, especially on certain days when you think, oh, I miss hearing that sound when I walk past this area of the park, or I miss seeing that when I walk past this ride. So it might sound daft to include it, but certain little things that just used to really add to the atmosphere of Blackpool Pleasure Beach is something that I do really miss. So before I film this video, I asked a couple of my friends what they miss about old school Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Obviously, this was a video of my opinions, but I will quickly mention some of the things that they said. One of them was the ambition of Blackpool Pleasure Beach in the 90s, where they wanted to go bigger, higher and faster than anyone else. I definitely missed that. Another one was Trauma Towers and Noah's Ark. Trauma Towers and Noah's Ark was one that was mentioned together. Again, this is what I mean when I say I could have done a video with 10 things, but the 5 I mentioned were the things that I missed the most. But those two are 2 things that kept coming up, and free entry or the entry pass was another thing, which is a video subject I'm going to do very soon. But for now, I'd love to know what you miss about old school Blackpool Pleasure Beach. So please let me know in the comments section below. And if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a like, which is the little thumbs up below. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.